Hey, SmartPak fans. I'm SmartPaker Dan. She's Dr. Lydia Gray, SmartPak staff veterinarian and medical director, and we're here to answer horse health questions asked and voted on by you. Now, things might look a little different in this episode since both Dr. Gray and myself are working from home due to the coronavirus outbreak. I know all of you are going through the same situation. Dr. Gray, what are you doing to kind of keep yourself entertained while we're quarantined right now?
Well, I am watching a lot of horse training videos, but I'm one of the lucky ones. And then I get to go to my barn. We're in a co-op situation, so we take turns feeding and cleaning, and we're following all the guidance and regulations. But because I have to care for my horses, I am allowed to go out there. I guess I'm essential. So what about you?
You are very lucky. Not a lot of people
I know.
in that
What
situation.
about you?
My barn is also closed right now, so I've been watching a lot of horse videos as well. Actually, one that I've watched recently was the one you did with Dr. Frank Andrews from LSU about.
I heard it's quite good.
I heard it's quite good, but that video is actually about COVID-19 and equine coronavirus. So a lot of great information in that video for horse owners to reference. That video we recorded, I believe, on April 2nd, right, Dr. Gray?
I could be, the days kind of all run together, but that sounds right.
So we know this is obviously an ever-changing situation, but there's a lot of good information in there. So we'll definitely put the link in the description for you guys to check out that one. And there's a lot of great links in that video to other resources for you to look at. But with that being said, we can at least get on to this next episode of Ask the Vet with our first question, which was submitted by Ostiax M's on YouTube. And they would like to know, I have a 2.5-year-old from the BLM, and she has been progressively getting round in the belly, but she doesn't really seem fat, if that makes sense. I have suspicions that she may be pregnant. Are there any signs that I could be looking for or anything I should do aside from just getting the vet out and doing a test? Ultimately, that is what I will do. If she is pregnant, how does the pregnancy affect a young horse? Is there the process harder on them? So, I mean, I think we all can experience getting a little rounder these days. But I'm curious to see what your thoughts are there.
All right, well, let's see if we can help her out. So I'm going to answer the first question, the last question first.
Yes.
And that was, is it harder on a young horse?
Correct.
And so my information comes from Dr. Deb McDonald, who is a behaviorist at the New Bolton Center at Penn. And she actually manages a herd of feral ponies.
Wow.
So, yeah. So what she said is, I'm quoting, under natural herd conditions, fillies start cycling, are bred, and become pregnant in their yearling spring.
So 2.5 is, in theory, not outside the realm of possibility.
Right. So often before their first birthday, some lose their pregnancies, but most go on to foal at about the age of 2.
Wow.
Their first foal. So here's what happens when you're reproductively efficient, that young. Their first foal might be small, reflecting that the dam's not yet fully grown, and the filly herself might not grow as big.
Oh.
And also the milk of the 2-year-old filly can be slower to come in, and maternal behavior is variable and often delayed when they're that young. So that's what can happen when a young horse gets bred a little bit too early.
So might give birth to a smaller foal. Themselves might not grow to be larger as well, and milk production might be impacted as well.
Correct. Yep. So then her other question, her main questions were, how do you tell if the filly is pregnant? So one way is you can, in the last 3 months or so of gestation, you can look at them and go, well, it looks like she's carrying a foal. Now, that's not a very reliable method, because we're going to show a picture of a horse very near and dear to my heart that looks like he's about to have a baby this spring. Newman. So looking at horses is not a very good predictor. Then you think, well, maybe
poor Newman, you always give him such a hard time.
and then you think, well, maybe heat cycles. But unfortunately, there are mares who are pregnant that still appear to be going through heat, and there are mares who are not pregnant, what we call open, that have silent heat, so don't show heat. So that's not reliable either. And then as I always go online and Google these questions when I see them, and there's actually quite a few myths and a lot of misinformation out there about how to tell if your horse is pregnant. I'm not even going to repeat those, because some of them are just like, what? So we'll get
old wise tales.
something. She's right on track. Bringing the vet out is the best bet. One, to see if her filly is pregnant. Two, to provide advice for the pregnant mare and soon to be foal. And then three, it sounds to me, and maybe I'm reading more into this than there is, but if she's just got this filly and has not had the vet out yet, just to do an all-around physical exam and provide some wellness services, you know, you got to do that.
That's a great point. That's a great point, especially coming from the BLM. There's a lot of things probably to look into there. You have diet changes, I'm sure, and and all that type of stuff to look over for. Absolutely.
Yeah. So when the vet comes to look at a mare to see if she's pregnant, there's a couple of things to do, and I'm going to go through all of them. But it sounds like this filly might be far along, and so many of them are sort of the what is that saying? Oh, the barn door is closed or something.
Yeah.
Too late for this filly, but so like I did when I was in practice, I did a lot of rectal ultrasounds at about 15 days to see if mares are pregnant.
Wow.
That's how early you can tell, and so but I think we're way past that.
We're a little past it.
Yeah. So at about 30 days, you can actually pick up the fetal heartbeat.
And then 30 days?
At 30 days. And then at about between 60 and 120 days is when you well, at 60 days, at 120 days, you can also do the fetal sexing now to tell if it's going to be a boy or a girl, filly or colt. But I think all those things are done for this person. I think she's much farther along than that.
It seems like we're a little further along in the process.
Yeah. So that's ultrasound. You know, your vet can always do a plain old rectal. Just stick the arm in and thump the baby on the head. And sometimes they kick back and you're like, well, okay, so yeah, you're pregnant. Those are always exciting. That might be tricky with a mare if she's not been touched much, if she's a, BLM Mustang mare.
Yeah.
Well, then you have the options of blood work. And there are a couple tests that your vet can draw blood for and run. One of them is, it's now called ECG for equine chorionic gonadotropin, but it used to be called PMS.
Just a simple phrase.
It's a simple phrase. It used to be called PMSG for pregnant mare serum gonadotropin. I don't know why they changed names, but just when we learn them, right? The other one is just plain old estrogen sulfate, but they each have very specific windows of when they're accurate and reliable and when they're not. And so again, without knowing the breeding date, it can be tricky even with these, but they're available. And the estrogen is available after about day 80 or so, and then on up to about 2 weeks until the due date. So that might be the best test for her, but it's something that she needs to have her vet out, have the conversation, decide what's the best way to go, and then fulfill all the other mare's needs at that time.
That's a great point, though. I forgot about the handling of a wild Mustang at this point, to try to do a rectal and all those different types of all the challenges that come into that as well.
Even drawing blood might be tricky.
Yeah. So good luck to you. But maybe you get a little baby out of it. You get a 2-for-1 sale, which is great. Well, thank you so much for submitting that question. And on to question number 2. So question number 2 was submitted by Roya MLM on Instagram, and they want to know, what is the best reference book about horse health and veterinary care that a rider should be aware of and read some parts of it or look for if he or she had a question? Oh, this is a good one.
It is. And I can't believe it's taken us this long to get this question. And I spent a long time thinking about this, and I looked through my library. You can see it behind me, and did a bunch of Googling. And you're gonna laugh when you hear what I came up with. Are you ready?
I'm so curious because I know the library that you have, so I'm sure it's very challenging to narrow it down to one. So I'm very curious.
It actually wasn't. It was the nutrient requirements of horses.
Go figure.
It seems like it's such a narrow topic, nutrition. But that book, and it's the 6th edition now, it was published in 2007, so it's got some age on it, but it covers so many good areas. That's where we got the example weekly workloads of horses, the light, moderate, heavy, and very heavy. That's in there. There's whole chapters on herbs and botanicals, joint supplements. big chapter on fats and even omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA. Of course, it covers all the nutrients like proteins, amino acids, vitamins and minerals, carbohydrates, your non-structural carbs, all that's in there. But it also covers diseases and conditions. I mean, you name it, it's in there, and it tells you not only how to feed for that, but also it just provides all the information that was current at that time for that. I mean, you know, PSSM is in there and other muscle diseases, Cushing's and equine metabolic syndrome, HYPP is a big one. Of course, that's a nutritional and muscle disease, but it's just a phenomenal resource.
Well, to your point, like nutrition is such the basis for, you know, life and all
It
these,
is.
like, so making sure your foundation is being taken care of, and then also how to address these different, you know, conditions that require a special diet and what that looks like is, sounds like it was a great resource for people.
Yeah, and I mean, I use it every day almost at work, and it covers gastric ulcers, and look how much we information we provide about that. A lot of it is balanced or comes from my resources, the NRC nutrient requirements of horses. Even our blanketing app, when we offer that, there's the thing called the upper critical temperature and the lower critical temperature, came straight from the NRC. There's this really cool fact that I read in there. It said, people always ask, what's better for horses as far as keeping them warm? Is it shelter? Is it a blanket? And so they shared a study that they looked at shelters, blankets separately, and shelters and blankets, and found that shelters provided like 9%. You needed 9% less fermentation product to keep your same body, your core temperature, and blankets were like 18%, but shelters and blankets together were almost 30%.
Wow.
I mean, it's just full of little factoids like that. Yeah. So,
how is the best way for people to get their hands on this? Is this you just purchase online, or?
Yeah, you can just purchase it online. Probably now you can just get an e-version of it. You probably don't have to get the big old book. Now I like the big old book because I've got pages like with post-it notes and little tabs and stuff folded over and paper clips. I mean, my book looks really awful, but it's well used and well loved. So
I was gonna say there is something about flipping the pages and also just having it at the bar and available for you to flip through.
Yeah.
Like,
it just lives on my desk.
I've seen a copy of it. It is quite used and loved.
Oh, you've seen the one I have at the SmartPak headquarters. I have also one at home.
I
have two.
As much.
It's so good. I have two.
The price of a carry-on, you don't have to pay for that twice. Well, thank you so much. I think that's a great resource, and hopefully that'll help you guys out with any questions that you have. So on to question number 3. This is also submitted by Roya MLM on Instagram. The second question in a row, this person really knows how to get the voting done. So they want to know, how many carrots a day is allowed to be given to a horse? When is the best time to give it? Is it better to give it right after a ride, or should we wait for a specific time and then feed it him or her? Or before riding is the best time? Which one? Thanks.
Okay. All I heard was carrots.
Yes, carrots.
All right.
So basically, when is the best time to feed carrots? I think is what we're trying to get at here.
Got it. I heard 3 questions-ish here. I heard, are carrots a good treat for horses? I think we should cover that.
Yep.
How many should you give? And then when is the best time to give them? Is that accurate?
Well, technically, we didn't ask if they're a good treat, just said how many are they allowed to have a day? So.
Yeah, but I'm going to answer that anyway. Because it's controversial. There are people who think, oh, carrots have too much sugar and you shouldn't eat them yourself or give them to horses. And I know they can have, based on what scale you look at, they can have a high glycemic index. I've seen a range as low as 39 to 71. And the glycemic index is a value, it's a human thing, but it's a value of how quickly or how slowly whatever food you're eating makes your blood sugar rise.
Yes.
And so in some tests, the carrots make it rise quickly, and in some tests, not so quickly. And it has to do with what else you eat at the same time. how quickly you eat and how many you eat, and other nutrients that are in that thing. So it, like I said, it's not been validated yet in horses, so it's not really a good indicator. My feeling is everything in moderation. So they may not be ideal, but if you only give a few, then it's probably fine. Even for those horses that have issues with sugar, like they have equine metabolic syndrome or Cushing's disease or PSSM or something.
So it sounds like it's one of those things that people took from the human world and kind of transferred it into the horse world, even though it hasn't necessarily been proven in horses yet. There's still more research that has to be done there.
Yeah, and if you think of what else the horse is eating and how much, I mean, you give a couple carrots and he's eating, 3 flakes of hay. It's kind of a drop in the bucket. So, but
well, that is a question a lot of people have about sugars. Like when I was on our customer care team, people used to ask that the entire time, like how much sugar is in this or that. And really, it's looking at the horse's whole diet, not just like 1 gram of something that they get once a day or something along those lines. It's what's the whole impact of it.
So then that leads right into how many should they get? And so oddly enough, well, first I have a story to tell you. Years and years ago when I was still taking Newman to clinics, we had got done with our lesson and I had a friend help me. She was taking him back to the stall and she says, oh, can I feed him some treats? And I said, yeah, there's a bag of carrots outside his stall. You could give that whole thing to him. And she knew me and she was like, wow, that must be a great lesson. Lydia's letting him have a bag of carrots. Can I show you the bag of carrots? Because I recreated it.
Yes.
It's 3 baby carrots. She thought, because she would feed her horse a literal bag of like whole long carrots. But they don't need that many. He knew he did a good job. Here's a handful of carrots. They're a high value treat if you're into dog training. That's what term they use. It's fine. The best explanation of this I found was from Nutrina, of all places.
Oh, really?
Feed company. Here's what they say when it comes to treats: feed only a small amount. Feeding your horse 15 large carrots at a time is more of a meal than a treat, right?
Yeah.
For an average sized horse, 1 or 2 carrots is sufficient. Feeding too much of any treat can actually have negative effects. On a balanced diet, it lowers the protein content, it raises the sugars and starches, dilutes out your vitamins and minerals, and too much of a certain treat can actually lead to digestive upset and even as much as colic and laminitis. So again, everything in moderation.
It's like when you have those like mini chocolate bars and instead of having 1, you have like 25 of them and then you don't feel as good after. Gotcha.
It's a little like that. So then the last part is, when is the best time to give? And I have another story for you. As you know, I have a young horse, and this is the first spring that I've had him. And so it's the first spring that I have had to lead him out to hand graze for 10 minutes, and then 20 minutes, and then 30 minutes, and then bring him back into the dry lot.
How's that been going?
Well, the first day went fine. And then the second day he went, why the heck would I come back in? So the third day, I decided, when I brought him back in, there was a feed tub with some carrots and apples in it. And he's like, oh, that's why I come back in. Because as much as I love the grass, there's something yummy and delicious waiting for me when I come back in. So now he drags me out to the grass and he drags me back in. So I use treats as a reward and for training. When you give treats willy-nilly, just any old time for nothing, then horses are like, they almost get to expect them, and they
gave like a carrot before you rode. The horse is like, well, why am I going to do work now? I already got the treat, the reward.
Yeah. And on the other hand, if you give a carrot every time after you ride, then you can create some bad behavior too. They can say, well, I want to be done riding now to get my carrot. Or it can cause horses, especially if you feed them by hand, can cause them to, nose your pockets and headbutt you and do all sorts of things. And just in general, be naughty. So I give treats for certain reasons, and I don't give a lot. I just give enough. And I give carrots and apples, and I give Newman a prune every day now. But don't tell him. That's because it has his medicine in it. So
He hasn't
Anyway,
caught on yet?
no, well, I don't think so. Even though sometimes he eats it and there's a big crunch in the middle. He looks at me funny and I'm like, I don't know, that was crunchy. So anyway, I think carrots are fine in moderation.
Perfect. That's good because I am a big carrot giver after a good ride. So I'm glad to hear that I'm still
After a good ride, perfect.
a good ride. Yes. Well, awesome. So go ahead, feel free to give your carrots after a good ride. So on to question number 4, and this was submitted by Patina on YouTube. What are the benefits and uses of feeding spirulina to horses?
So spirulina, we also call it blue-green algae. It has both nutritional aspects to it, value, and health benefits. And so probably for most horse people, it's those health benefits from the other compounds in the algae, the flavonols, the carotenoids, and the phycocyanin compound is really interesting to scientists. So there's been a lot of research on it. It is a potent antioxidant, might even be some properties to change inflammatory system. It seems to have a particular attraction to the central nervous system or brain tissue. So it's very protective against it scavenges those free radicals and those reactive oxygen species in the brain and also the liver. So, but there's research now in horses too that backs a little bit of this up. But she asked, what are the benefits in horses? And I see it in supplements for the respiratory system, for skin, for systems that are faced with oxidative stress or that the immune system sometimes gets out of balance with. So like allergies and things.
Mm-hmm.
The most recent research, and I'm going to grab it here, it's Spirulina platensis, which is the genus and species of it. They did a study in lab and in horses, and they showed that it enhances insulin sensitivity in those horses with EMS or equine metabolic syndrome. They lost weight and their insulin sensitivity improved. And that paper is in the journal Marine Drugs. So that was a new one for me. So we see it in skin supplements, respiratory, and I think based on this paper, we're going to see it now in supplements for the metabolic and the endocrine systems. So supplements to support your horse's hormonal metabolism. I'm surprised it hasn't been already in supplements to support pituitary health for senior horses, along with like chaseberry. That seems to be the next thing coming down the line for me.
Let's just say I've known a lot of people who've used it, to your point, for like things of like allergy or skin or things like immune system support type supplements.
Exactly.
So it's really interesting to see that's having such great results in like EMS and pituitary support as well.
Yeah, because we know those conditions have a lot to do with the reason the tissues aren't responding properly is because of the oxidative stress. And so if this has components in it that combat that specifically, then that makes sense that you would use it for that. So I know we have supplements where it's an ingredient among others, but we also have the Smart and Simple that is just spirulina. So depending on what this person wants it for, she could purchase just the spirulina, or she could purchase it as one of other ingredients to support a system.
Yeah, and to your point, we do have it on a lot of our other supplements as well. So it could really give you kind of a broader spectrum there as well. Or you can go super focused and focus on the Smart and Simple spirulina for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are awesome. Well, that's really helpful. So good to know there's lots of great research out there on spirulina, and we're just learning more and more about the benefits it has for horses. So hopefully, Bettina, that helps you out and let us know how it works for your horse. So on to question number 5. This was submitted by Amy on YouTube, and Amy wants to know, can you explain why alfalfa is not good to feed exclusively? More specifically, is feeding a hard-keeping senior full alfalfa forage during winter okay?
So alfalfa
is a great topic.
It is because it's I get asked it a lot, and like the carrot question earlier, it's a bit controversial.
Yes.
In that depending on where you live and what kind of horses you have, there are people who love alfalfa and there are people who hate it. And I'm not sure I know anybody who's sort of in between, sort of like, man, if people feel very strongly about this. If you're in California, they have a lot of it because it grows in more dry conditions. So places in our country that are wetter are not gonna have as much of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that said, I think the reason she is concerned or has heard warnings about it is because the vet school in California, UC Davis, issued a report that said almost 100% of the horses they saw for a certain colic surgical condition, enterolis, which is stones in the intestinal tract.
Okay.
Those horses, when they did like a survey of why maybe you have this, at least the horses who were on at least a 50% alfalfa diet had the stones. So there is a link. There is a link between feeding of at least half your diet, half your forage in alfalfa, and the development of enterolis. Now we know alfalfa is high in calcium, but it actually seems to be the magnesium in the alfalfa that is linked to stones.
I would assume it was the calcium.
Right, yeah, but they're like struvite crystals in cats, so it's magnesium. But alfalfa, so for the good side, that's the bad side. The good side is it's high in calcium, it's high in protein, and it's high in calories. What is surprising to a lot of people is that it's not high in the non-structural carbohydrates, the NSCs, the sugars and starches. It's actually usually lower than grass hays. So for people who are not feeding alfalfa because they're worried about sugars and starches, they've got it a little bit backwards.
That is commonly the theory there. A lot of people say that because of the sugars that were in alfalfa usually.
Yeah, no. It is high in calories though. So she wants to feed it to her senior horse, who I suspect is maybe thin or underweight. She's a hard keeper, I think.
Especially during the winter.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. I mean, I when I had an off-the-track thoroughbred that was a hard keeper, I fed him alfalfa a little bit, like one flake of alfalfa and maybe 4 flakes of grass hay. So I mixed it. But you could also feed, it wouldn't have to be just long stem forage. You could also feed alfalfa hay cubes or alfalfa hay pellets if that's like easier to soak and they're more condensed, so they fit in a feed tub better. You know, hay can be messy and bigger, so so good for the underweight horse, and good for horses that need to be on a high plane of nutrition. So your late-term pregnant mare, your lactating mare, young and growing horses, race horses that are expending a lot of energy working. And we also found there were some studies years ago that said horses prone to gastric ulcers do better when they're given alfalfa hay. But it's like, go ahead.
I was gonna say because the higher calcium that would be in it?
Well, they think, but they're not sure. They think that maybe the calcium buffers the stomach from the acid that causes the ulcers. But again, it's not a straight diet of alfalfa hay. It's adding to their grass basis, adding flake here to flake there. Maybe they get grass hay like ad lib, like all the time, and then they get a flake of alfalfa at meals and a flake of like morning and night. So not all the time.
Something you brought up that I thought was also a good point was talking about like the soaking of alfalfa cubes, which could also potentially be a good option for her if she's feeding for her senior horse in the winter. Just another option of giving making sure getting moisture and water into the system as well. So absolutely.
And I don't know if this is part of her issue, but alfalfa is really tasty. We call it ice cream at my barn. We always have some, and we use it for when horses, they get it as a treat if they need a distraction. So right now they're not allowed on the grass pasture full time. We're building their tolerance up, and so when they're brought in and they're a little bit cranky because they have to be on the dry lot, we give them some alfalfa, and suddenly the sun's shining again. It's all better. So but where I would not use it is the horse that's overweight, because it is very nutrient dense, very high in calories. Since it's got so much calcium, its ratio of calcium to phosphorus is way above what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be 1.2 to 2 to 1, and this can be 4 to 1. I've seen some as high as 6 to 8 to 1. So in those cases where it would not be beneficial for there to be too much calcium, so you don't want to even give the pregnant or lactating broodmare or the young horse full alfalfa because it's too much calcium and not enough phosphorus, and the balance isn't there. But also times where if excess protein is a problem. So, you know, if you feed a horse too much protein, they're getting more than they need. They just pee out. So especially in the winter, if the horse doesn't need it, they're going to be drinking more and peeing more and stinking up the barn with the ammonia in the stall, right?
Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that. So, but on the other hand, it's good for the horses that need a better top line because there's more protein in it, specifically the amino acid lysine, which we know is the first limiting. So
Yes.
you want to think carefully about alfalfa and use it judiciously. It's not a terrible food. It's not a perfect food. So it has its places.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. It sounds like used a little bit strategically with the horse that you're currently working with.
Exactly.
And it's
Exactly.
not just like a blanketed thing where everyone in the barn gets this much alfalfa. It might have to be adjusted based on your horse's personal needs and work condition and things of that nature.
Exactly. Very well put.
Thank you. Well, hopefully that helps you guys out and hopefully helps your senior out. Well, that's it for this month's episode of Ask the Vet. Thank you everyone for submitting your questions. We still plan on doing more of these while we're working from home, so keep asking your questions. Ask anytime on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the SmartPak blog, our form at smartpak.com/askthevetquestions using hashtag AskTheVetVideo. If your question was answered in this video or a previous one, just make sure to email us at customercare@smartpak.com to claim your gift card. So until next time, make sure to subscribe and stay safe, everyone.